Hi there, my name is Irai, and today I would like to tell you about my road trip around Australia, almost 13,000 kilometers in 2 weeks. Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, Darwin, back to Sydney. A lot of kilometers, a lot of driving. Let's go. First things first, know your car. Know where all the buttons are, what they do, how to control it without taking your hands off of your wheel. If you're doing high speed at let's say 100 kilometers per hour, you travel, it's going to be on the screen, you travel this amount. But if you travel just 30 kilometers more, your field of vision narrows and it feels not just like 30% faster, it feels a lot faster, believe me. And most of the highways around Australia are
I have begun to notice its influence over a whole range of my own actions.
Freakonomics. Most highways around Australia are 130 kilometers per hour highways. So you're going to be driving quite quickly. And those roads aren't the best. So you gotta know how to control your music, answer, your cruise control and everything, how to cancel it, stuff like that. In case you want to know more, you like reading, just RTFM, just read the manual. You'll be wiser. Trust me, you'll learn stuff that you didn't know your car can do, that it can do. Number 2, know your tires. Before I went on the road, obviously I had my car check. I would recommend you do the same. And they recommended me to change front wheels in the next few thousand kilometers because I was going for a long drive. I changed them immediately. But the rear ones, when I got back, you can see on the screen, they were in a pretty awful condition. So I had them changed pretty much straight after I got back. So know your car, know your tires, know what they can handle and withstand. I don't have a spare tire. I've got run flats, but these ones aren't run flats. So if I get a puncture, I have nothing. Well, I do now. I've got a hole puncher that I can fix myself, and I've got the air compressor there I can just plug in the boot of my car. So I can get by, and also have a bicycle, so I can cycle somewhere, or I can just call for help. Probably easier. If you're going for a long ride, you know that your oil needs to be changed every so often, usually every 10 to 15,000 kilometers. I recommend changing it before and after. I've changed my oil probably a week before I went, and so I change also my air filter and my cabin filter so I can breathe nicely when I'm on the road. And there's a lot of dust. I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's a lot of dust, a lot of bushfire during winter or autumn. So you want to breathe fresh air as much as possible because it irritates your lungs and your eyes and everything. So, and so does your car. Obviously not as sensitive, but yeah, it's good to do regular maintenance. Your car will thank you for it. Fuel. Stick to what you need. If it says 95, put 95 in there. Don't put 91. The reason they say to put 95 or 98 is not the purity or whatever. That's crap. The reason is that the higher the number, it can withstand higher tolerances for when the ignition happens. So then you can have higher compression within your engine. Higher compression means higher efficiency. Higher efficiency means more power, but obviously more range. So stick to what the door says or what the manual says. If it says 91, just put 91. You don't need 95, you don't need V-power, you're just wasting money. 95, 91, whatever it is, stick to that. The reason I'm talking about it is because some cars, like my wife's little Polo GTI, requires 98. If you are going between roadhouses and areas that aren't as populated, a 98 could be an issue. So if your car requires 98 or 95, top up whenever you get a chance, because you might not get a chance. I don't know how many times, probably half a dozen, maybe even a dozen of times, I need to put 91 because some of the petrol stations didn't have 95, 98. Some only had diesel. So I was limping about 90 kilometers on a range of 60 kilometers to the next town to get at least 91, so I can get to another town where I can get 95 or 98. So yeah, jerrycan would be obviously handy, but I don't think it's necessary. You've got petrol stations everywhere. If you're driving diesel, it's never a problem because all the trucks are carrying diesel. So all the roadhouses and petrol stations will have diesels. Most important thing, don't be a muppet and get insurance, and also get a windscreen protection. Road trains, high speeds, a lot of driving, the likelihood of you getting a chip, a big chip like I did, where you have to change the whole windscreen. In my case, it's $650. In your case, it could be like, Toyota Hilux, $250. It's not such a big deal, but the insurance only costs $50, and you can get month by month. So you can only get fully insured, comprehensive insurance for a month or however long you travel, and then discontinue. You'll be fine. Some additional tips: get Telstra, because pretty much all places have Telstra only. If you even have Aldi or some other third provider, they use Telstra as a carrier. You only get 3G. If you want 4G or even higher speed, get Telstra. You can have 2 SIMs in most phones, newer phones. Yeah, get Telstra. It'll be worth it. If you don't care that you're without the signal, don't worry about it. However, if you travel with Vodafone, just like you didn't have anything. So beware. In capital cities, no problem, but in outback, could be an issue. Now to some driving tips. I know this could be obvious to people who have been driving for a while, but I think they're still important to reiterate because, they could save your life. So slow down during sunset or sunrise, because there's going to be a lot of wildlife, silly wildlife that, like to get killed, I suppose. There is some suicidal kangaroos out there, so beware. If you see them on the side of the road and you're approaching, slow down, because 100% certainty they'll jump in front of you to the other side. When you're driving at night, I usually look at the line on the left-hand side to keep to my side of the road. I wouldn't look at the middle, because then you have the other car's beam. It could be blinding, even though it's probably low beam. Still, I'll look at the left-hand side, because we drive left in Australia. So I look at the left-hand side and slow down until the car passes. I slow down and disengage the cruise control. I don't usually like to use cruise control at night because the reactions need to be swifter, and you don't want to rest your foot on the brake at all times, because it's tiring. And when you even slightly touch it, it'll disengage your cruise control. So best to have no cruise control, just gas it a little, keep the foot on and then brake as you need. So the reason I'm saying, going back to my point, to slow down, is because up to the point that someone else passes you, you have high beams, right? You can see pretty far, but then there's a big straight, maybe 1, maybe 2 kilometers even. It's pretty common in the outback. And for this distance, you cannot see very far. So you try to slow down so you have good visibility and good reaction time, because you obviously, driving at night, you're gonna be tired. I know I'm rehashing the obvious, but trust me, when you are tired, it's not that obvious. So hear me out. I plead with you. When I was passing a road train, as soon as it passed, I put my high beams up, and then I can see in the ditch a massive bull, literally like 3-4 meters away from me. I know they are heavy and they aren't very agile animals, but even if it decided to come across, a few seconds before, I would not have seen it very quickly, and I would have hit him for sure. So the reason he slowed down is to minimize any sort of damage or injury that could happen to you and to others. Speed limits. Some highways, as I mentioned, have very high speed limits, 130. It's very fast road, but the road surface doesn't always correspond. So even if the speed, like the speed limit is high, doesn't mean you have to drive at the limit. I'm saying that because some people are, like my wife, are doing that, and it's not very smart. Because if your road is bumpy and your car bounces all over the place, obviously your contact is compromised, your your steering, you aren't able to steer as quickly and precisely. Your braking, likewise, because your tires are bouncing, so they're losing contact. Bear that in mind. If the road is bad, slow down to the road limits, not to the limits of the road, if that makes sense. Same with any sort of weather. If it's raining, I highly recommend do not use cruise control, because cruise control is trying to maintain the speed. So if you happen to come across aquaplaning, the wheels will stop spinning because you're pretty much floating on a wall of water that your wheels cannot flush out, but your cruise control will try to keep up the momentum, so it'll even speed up. So it can be quite dangerous, so avoid doing that, mainly in heavy rain. In light rain, it's fine, mainly in modern cars, but in heavy rain, do not use that. Speaking of cruise control, definitely, absolutely, highly recommend driving a car with a cruise control. Do not take anything else. Your foot will go bananas. You will have cramps. It's not a great experience, mainly when you're driving, a lot of kilometers like I have. If you're going to be driving 100 kilometers a day and taking 4 months, you'll be fine. And last but not least, rest when you are tired. Again, obvious thing, but I've seen a lot of cars on the side of the road rolled over or crashed or wrapped in the trees, or even burned down, collided with another car, and there are no skid marks. People have fallen asleep. It happens. So beware. If you are tired, take 20 minutes. If you are nowhere near to any sort of, a petrol station or roadhouse or town, take a break. Get some rest, 20 minutes, no more. Get to another town safely and just sleep in there, even though you might have had something else booked or you don't particularly want to stay there. Trust me, it's better to get there late than never at all. And on this note, on this very positive note, to keep you alive, thank you for watching. Enjoy Australia and safe driving. In case you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments. See you next time. Bye.